Yeah, there we go. Job's a good one. Welcome back to episode 197 of Tall Boy Radio. And as we always say, who knows where it goes when the beer flows? Well, we're heading stateside tonight as we're looking at my favourite sport, Gaz's favourite sport, our guest's favourite sport, and we'll get to Dave later and find out what his favourite sport is. So without further ado, Gaz, tell us what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Good evening, the world. Really looking forward to this. It's one of my favourite subjects to talk about. As Adam has sort of alluded to already, we're going to be talking about the NFL and everything associated and to do with the NFL. We're going to look at franchises in the UK. We're going to look at potential European conferences. We're going to talk to our guest, who's going to give us an absolute insight into what it's like from a sort of media point of view. So absolutely fascinated to hear what that is. So I'm really, really, really looking forward to this episode.
Indeed, me too. You know we love the NFL here, and we're going to be talking, like Gaz says, about the games that are played on British soil. So, Dave, which baseball films have you been watching this week?
Very funny. I don't know. I'm sure I'll be able to throw one reference into NFL that's nothing to do with the NFL. But I learned loads on the last episode we did. Absolutely tons.
Tell us something you learned then.
Yeah.
Tell us something you learned, Dave.
I learned about the QBs, the quarterback, the GMs, the general manager. The draft is like a massive show that just starts with people being filmed for fitness, for running, jumping, squats, the whole thing. They all get scored on cards. They get millions of interviews. And then it's like a massive game show.
Indeed. So he has learned something. Yeah. So just before we say hi to our guest, hello to my cousin Bo, who is watching there. So, Liz, did you want to say hello and tell us a little bit about how you got into the NFL?
Yep. So it's a bit of a silly story, but when I first met my husband in 2012, he wasn't my husband obviously then, he's my husband now. He was watching a game and I was like, oh, okay, being from Warrington, rugby league town, I was like, okay, there's some similarities in this, and I just kind of started to get hooked straight away. The first game I ever saw, it was the Seahawks. I can't remember who they were playing. What I really, really liked was kind of like the cocky attitude of Richard Sherman, the whole Legion of Boom thing. So I committed straight away. I committed before I even knew what the heck was going on. And I started to blog about it in 2014. And then, here I kind of am where I am, doing my own thing, loving the sport. And that's me in a nutshell, really.
I'm totally lost now. So you've just said loads of things in that first sentence: names, places, teams, and that's it. I've gone straight away. I'm back at square one.
Surely you've heard of Seattle.
The place, but there wasn't just, you said Seattle Seagulls or something.
Seahawks, darling.
Seahawks.
And
a
Seahawk.
So close,
is that a bird? A Seahawk?
It's a fake bird. It's not even a real bird. It doesn't exist.
What chance have I got? I mean, seriously, it's not even a real bird.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, but it is a real team. I mean, it's a very successful team as well, and a good team to follow.
Yeah.
If you don't follow aside from Pittsburgh, then we'll allow it. So, like Gaz and I, like Gaz said, so Gaz got into watching it in the 80s. I think I started watching it around about the same time. Started following the Steelers for rather erroneous reasons, but we've covered that on other podcasts. But just recently, and I say just recently, going back over the last 10, 15 years, the NFL has been sharing the love and sharing the games, actual regular season games, Dave. So not just friendlies, and playing them on British soil. And it is very, very exciting to see. And it is a spectacle when you're going to get involved. So which was the first game then that you went to see?
Me. So I first game I went to see was 2014, Atlanta Falcons and Detroit Lions. And I already at this point had like a good love for Detroit Lions. They just being the underdog even then, and not anymore, they're doing all right now, but so that's the first game I ever saw. we'd gone up, I think, either on the Friday or the Saturday, and they did a whole takeover at Trafalgar Square, which was awesome. So they did like player interviews. They had like good few players from each squad kind of turn up and cheerleaders to the Lions, and it was such a cool atmosphere. And for that first exposure of going to my first game, it was really cool. It was really just good to see, and I think the Americans, for example, don't realize how many jerseys they're going to see at these kind of games, whereas for us, that's totally normal to see every jersey. Like, we kind of like that, right?
Yeah, we love to see that, don't
Yeah.
we? It's funny enough, whenever we've spoken to them as well, we've kind of said that it's a great spectacle that you can get so many people representing all those different teams, and it is good, and it's a friendly conversation. There's plenty of banter and plenty of ribbing each other. Whereas if you were to do that with the English Premier League sides, bloodbath.
You just couldn't. Yeah, you couldn't. Yeah,
and the first time we went down, we went down, I think, this Saturday morning. The fan rally, they took over Trafalgar Square, and we sort of walked in, and we were just saying just before we came live, the first time we went, you needed a game ticket to get into the fan rally. So it was genuine game fans, I suppose, and the atmosphere was incredible, and people they were singing, and there was dancing, and there was banter. There was a guy falling in a fountain and all sorts of stuff going on. And that was just the first 5 minutes sort of thing. And, and it's such a good atmosphere. And everybody had a little bit to drink, but nothing, as Adam said, there was no malice. It was just everybody there for the same reason, just to go and enjoy the game.
Yeah.
And I think, and I think, as you said, Liz, I think because there was back in the day, there was only one game. That was like the focal point, and then it was like every NFL fan in the UK went to that game. Whereas now, obviously, you get your choice of sort of 3 or 4 games, really. So, but no, I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think it not rekindled my love for it, because I've always loved the NFL, but actually looking forward to that weekend and going down for that weekend. And I say, me and Adam went, we went down for years. Unfortunately, not being able to get tickets for the last few years, just because of the demand, really. So. Look forward to going again.
Yeah, and like Gaz says there is a real demand, and so I don't know if you can put it into words. An enormous fan base in the UK, people who really, really enjoy and are very passionate about the game.
I missed your question because for some reason it's frozen a little bit.
All right, sorry. That's not, I did see it freeze a little while. I didn't know it was us or yourselves. So so in terms of like the demand for the game, it's enormous in the UK now, isn't it? And trying to get all the tickets is a real challenge. So can you explain to people who've not had any interaction with the game just how huge it is and what the attraction is?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely massive. I mean, every single year now, I feel like certainly for as long as I've been a fan, those tickets sell out instantly. So you've got Wembley. I'm pretty sure Wembley's around 80,000. You've got Tottenham now, which is around 60,000 a game. And it sells out every single time. Does it sell to the right people? Not always, because there's definitely a lot of tickets on reseller sites. But I think with the way that Ticketmaster is changing things now, it is starting to be harder to make money off tickets, if that makes sense. So hopefully tickets are now ended up in the right kind of hands. But it's massive. It's just it's absolutely crazy how big it's grown and how much it just continues year on year as well.
Yeah, it is. It's utterly. It's mind blowing for us, and like you say, the fact that we can't get tickets is probably indicative of just how many people are actually there and want to be part of that spectacle. Sorry, but there is, like I say, there is that sort of real American razzle dazzle. So to get people into the game originally, those tickets were really quite cheap, weren't they? I think we started off paying £50-60.
About 50, I think about 50 quid. I think,
yeah. Whereas now the tickets we're paying were typically about 120, 130, weren't they? Yeah, but you get your money's worth. I will say that. I'm not dogging on it. I do think it's a fantastic spectacle. But stuff like the day before, so on Regent Street and Trafalgar Square that you mentioned, that was there to try and attract people and bring people in, wasn't it? And I think this was all part of their marketing scheme.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so this year and last year, actually, last year they did like a fan rally, if you will, at South Bank. This year it was at Battersea Power Station. And it's just awesome. So you whichever one, you walk up to it, they've got the helmets for every single team. They've got like a really perfectly positioned like frame, so you can stand in it and get your picture done with, I don't know, whatever's in the background. So Battersea Power Station, and it, you know, the shot itself looks really cool. And then they've got things like activations is such a brand term, a marketing term, but basically parts where you can be a quarterback, you can be a wide receiver, you can be a kicker, punter, whatever. There's loads of little things that you can do whilst you're there. That are just cool. And interestingly this year, so bear in mind the activation that was done at Battersea was Bills Jags. And I don't understand why this was there, but there was like tents for Jets, tents for Vikings, tents for other teams, like 2 other teams. Can't remember who they were off the top of my head, but it wasn't just about the Jags and the Bills. So it was quite interesting that it is still going for all types of fans, and the Americans are traveling really well to these games as well now, which is really interesting. So going back to the whole ticket scenario, this obviously the season ticket holders for those teams get offered, kind of first dibs, if you will. Then it comes to season ticket holders for the UK season ticket holders, and then it's kind of a bit of a free reign of who's kind of what's left, really.
Yeah.
And then as it gets closer to the games, the allocation that, say, America, for example, had then gets opened up again to British fans. So it's kind of one of those things where you kind of just have to be on it. So in the scenario where you miss out in the first place, you're a bit disheartened and don't want to try again, do you? But it's definitely worth a shot again. But yeah, I mean, it's been amazing to kind of witness the evolution, to be honest, of how they've done these pre-game activities, because like we said, we've got 3 or 4 games a year now, and we can only really do the big fan rally before one of them. I think it'd be too expensive for them to try and do it for every single one, but what they do to kind of, I guess, make up for it is things like the Around the NFL podcast that they'll do live, or they'll do a NFL UK live with Roger Goodell and a couple of players. So there's always lots of different things that are going on, which is great. And I think more brands are trying to get involved as well with, being able to get in front of the right audience for them, to be honest, and be able to open up to new fans that say we're into that brand of clothing that is now doing NFL stuff. And it just sort of all plays into it to build it up even further. So it's definitely interesting to see how it's grown in those different ways.
I think the thing for me was sort of the first couple of that we went to, it sort of introduced me really to like the typically American sort of razzmatazz and how they put on a show. And we've been to Premiership football games, and I've been to other sporting events, and you go for the game and almost that's it. Whereas with the NFL, there was all of the hullabaloo and the razzmatazz, and you've got you've got your cheerleaders, you've got your drum line, you've got your mascots running up and down, you've got your t-shirt guns, you've got all sorts. You got a halftime show, you've got all sorts going on. And actually, I think what's happened is there's been an evolution in sort of football in the UK and other sports, in as much as that they're trying to bring a little bit of that in. So there's much more surrounding other sports. And I think the NFL have led that, because they've always put on that fantastic show. And you really do feel as though you get value for your money, because whilst the game time is 60 minutes, what you get is you get 2.5, 3 hours. And you get all the halftime stuff. You get your razzmatazz, as I say. You get a lot of stuff surrounding the actual game. You get your big screen replays. You get your interaction with your referees and all the whole thing. And I think there's so many other sports trying to evolve their sort of enjoyment and entertainment. But the NFL did that first.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that I noticed when we first went down. It was like, wow, look at this. And it was like, how cool is it?
Oh, yeah. We were, like I say, the first time that we went down, I think I said, was the Bears Buccaneers game. I'm not a fan of either of those teams, but just to be a part of it, and the razzmatazz, like this guy said about it, it's fantastic. It sucks you in, the whole thing, the music, and don't get me wrong. I think if you were to go to a US game, it's probably quite far away from how they do it over there with their tailgating. I'd love to experience that as
that
well.
would be
By the
cool.
way.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
just how interesting. Have you ever been to a game in the
I
States?
have, yeah. So I did. This was 2016. It was Giants Saints. We'd gone to New York, and we'd made sure we were going to be there at least from Wednesday to Tuesday in case there was a game Thursday night or Monday night. Thankfully, it was a Sunday. But yeah. So it's mega like. I mean, it's just different to here. Like we don't have that big space around a stadium, so we'd heard about this thing because it was a Giants game. We heard about this thing called, I don't know, the Big Blue Tailgate or something like that. We're just walking around the car park trying to find this thing. We've got no idea where we're going. We're literally asking people who are at the cars, like, "Oh, we're trying to find the Big Blue Tailgate," and they're like, "Well, we're not it, but you can join us if you want." Like they're so friendly and like
Wow.
they know you're a Brit, so they're like, "Okay, this will be cool. Like, come join us," type thing. And it's awesome. So we eventually found the tailgate, and there was like former players there, barbecues, loads of drinks, and it's all like it's unlimited basically. You're there for however long before the game, and you can go there again afterwards as well. And it's just cool. And the game is like the stadium experience. It's different to the UK. Like I don't remember there being a halftime show or things like that. But it was just cool to experience it. I mean, it's a very different stadium to what we have here. It's very open. I had to go buy a hat because that sun was on me, and I was like, okay, I can't handle this. I'm gonna burn. But it was cool. It was a really good experience, and I really enjoyed it. I suppose it's so different to the UK. Like going to Wembley or going to Tottenham, I know I can get home. I know I can jump. I can walk and get on a tube. Definitely can't do that at, in New Jersey. We had to like get a taxi. You can definitely get buses, but we just didn't know where we were going. We were just new. We didn't know what we were doing. But I would definitely love to go. There's loads of games I want to go to. Like we've talked about doing like a West Coast road trip and say starting off at either Seattle or San Fran and just driving our way down the coast and going to as many college football games, high school games, NFL as we can, and just experience it because it's so different. I mean, I'd love to see college and high school. I mean, it's just their audience is even bigger. Their stadiums are even bigger. So I just think, I mean, it's their sport. They've played it since they were kids. It's very different for us, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's just, highly recommend it.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you're talking about his Dave, I don't know if you can imagine this, but the stadiums they have at some of the colleges, Dave, are larger than some of the Premier League stadiums. They are absolutely vast. I was in Texas in the summer. I forget which one. I think we might have gone past the Longhorn stadiums, and it was ridiculous.
Wow.
Absolutely massive. And like I say, and what I would suggest you do if you haven't seen it before, jump online, have a look at some of those games just to start off. Like, say, for example, Virginia Tech. Just watch to start off when they bring their teams out because it is fantastic. You're familiar with the song Enter Sandman by Metallica.
That's literally what I've got in my head right now.
But you can't watch that without the hair standing up on the back of your arms.
Yeah.
It's something to behold.
I think. I mean, I've said before on a couple of different NFL podcasts. My number one sort of sporting bucket list really is to go watch the Bears play at Soldier Field. I would absolutely. I can't tell you how much I want that to happen. And I know there was talk about the Bears sort of moving away from Soldier Field, and they were looking at, sort of not moving out of Chicago and moving the whole franchise, but just moving stadium. And I'm like, no, don't do it. I want to go to Soldier Field. And I think pick your date because it could get quite cold if you go the wrong time of year. But it for me it is number one. Just to A, they're my team, and B, just experience a game in America would be cool.
Yeah.
Do they sell out in America? Do they sell out these games like the top Premiership games?
Quite interesting, yeah. So if, for example, if the game doesn't sell out, they don't show it on TV locally. So the team has to give away their allocation of tickets. They have to have no tickets left, kind of thing. So it is quite interesting in a scenario. I mean, I suppose say it's either a Monday or a Thursday. I suppose that's the one where it's going to be the hardest to, I suppose, sell out in a way. But yeah, it definitely Yeah, they basically give away tickets to schools if they don't, for example, sell their allocation. But yeah, that's quite an interesting way of doing it, to be honest.
Yeah, so they can't show it on telly unless the stadium's
Yeah.
full.
Yeah.
That, I mean, because in the UK with football, there's always this massive argument, isn't it? You can't show games at 3:00 because nobody's going to watch it. But if you just applied that simple rule, fill the stadium, or you can't show the game. If you fill it, you can show the game. Why not? There's no problem there.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, but you still probably couldn't give away tickets for Everton, I don't imagine.
There has to be a dig, doesn't there, somewhere? Yes, we Everton are bad, and yes, the Bears are bad. Yes, I know.
There's a correlation. So, in terms of your experience as well, your experience this year, especially, hasn't just been that of a fan, has it? You've had a little bit of media experience. You can tell us about that, because Gaz and I can tell you for one, we're very envious of this, aren't we?
Very envious and very interested in how you got into it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I suppose how I got into it. I mean, I've been writing since 2014, and with my own podcast and things like that. And I've also got a show, with Sky with two other girls that I'm a guest host on. And I suppose it's just that experience over the year that decided to apply for credentials properly this year. Got approved for the first time, which is absolutely incredible. And I've managed to do some little media bits before, but this was an interesting experience because this was the build-up and going to the game itself. So that was just different anyway. I've always gone as a fan, so it was interesting to not... I suppose it's interesting to feel like I was working this time, if that makes sense. But yeah, so each one started on Friday. Well, no, let's start with game one. So Jags, Falcons. I went along to the Falcons training kind of practice on the Friday. That was held at a private boys' high school, maybe a high school, I'm pretty sure it was. And they've got amazing facilities anyway. So the Falcons are there, they are practicing. You get to go out to the field for around 5 minutes, 10 minutes most, while they're doing a bit of warm-up, doing a couple of drills that you're allowed to see, because what they don't want you to do is obviously film the stuff that they're going to use against their opposition, basically. But what was really cool about it, so after the practice, you're allowed to go back down again. And you can, at that point, grab players to have, short interviews with, or it's a bit of a media scrum. And that's the bit I'm not claustrophobic, but I hate it. Because you just... the player might walk right up to you, or you might have to go to kind of where they are, depending on where they've just been brought by their PR person. And then that's it. One literally came right up to me, and that was it. Elbows in your face, microphones right in your face. Like, it is, it's an experience. But it's fascinating to hear kind of how the coaches feel about it all, how the players are feeling about it all, and it's also interesting hearing the kind of questions that get asked. So certainly for the Falcons practice, I don't remember there being much in the way of American media. It was very much British media.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of questions around what are you going to be doing whilst you're here? Do you have time off to go explore London and things like that? So that was cool. And then game one, going to the actual game day itself. This is at Wembley, so the media room is just it's basically like a little, I suppose, cafe in a way. And then you go down to where your seats are. What's quite good about that room is you can see the field from there. So if I am running up to get a cup of tea, I'm not missing out on anything, which is good. And you're exposed to the elements, you're exposed, the fans are around you. So it's a very interesting dynamic. Certainly for hearing how things are and still being in the atmosphere, which I think is really good. Game two was Bills Jags. So by this point, the Jags have been here. I think by the time the game came around, they'd been here for 10 days.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting because that gave them the time to be able to bond as a team, to settle into the time zone. Because whilst the research is there to say it doesn't really affect it, I think it's pretty sure it's pretty clear to me that it does. So it was interesting, certainly for me, to be able to hear that consistency of post-game presser on game one and hearing them again in the build-up and the post-game presser of game two. I actually managed to ask Doug Peterson a question of do you think that being there for the 10 days has helped you guys bond more as a team? He really seemed to enjoy that question and really kind of happily answer it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed just having that consistency of hearing the team 2 weeks in a row and just hearing how those, I suppose, answers may or may not have changed as well, because we've pretty much had the same players both times, so that was quite cool. I could definitely tell at the end of game 2, they were in a rush to go and get on that flight.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a lot shorter than the previous.
Just curious and interested about sort of in a way, is there any insight into what the players really think? Because I can imagine that, you hear a lot of the media and they're all like, yeah, it's great, we love coming over, and you wonder whether or not that's just a PR factory that's just churning out, you've got to say it, we've got to sell shirts, we've got to promote the brand. But actually, do they really think that, or is it just this PR machine that is just churning out the answers?
So this was what was interesting. So bear in mind, game 2, the Bills fans, they turned up. It felt like it did for me, for the first time as a fan, whatever, it felt like a genuine home game. And so asking the players kind of how it felt from a sound point of view, I think they were a little bit more honest this time, in that they felt they knew the Bills were loud, they knew the Bills had turned up. I think they know very well that we are, as a fan base, mixed. We probably don't get loud when they want us to get loud, and then we shout and scream at everything. So we get excited when special teams punt off. There are things that just wouldn't normally happen at home for them, but that happen at Wembley, and they recognise that. So I definitely think that's been interesting. I didn't feel like I was getting the PR answer. I felt like I was getting a genuine response from some of them. So yeah, that has definitely been fascinating to kind of hear that. Yeah, I don't think we're hearing anymore what we want to hear. I mean, the Jags have been coming here for a long time now, so it does.
Yes, yeah.
They're a lot more familiar with it. So yeah, it's definitely been interesting to hear kind of their view on it, really. Yeah.
So do you think? I mean, you just mentioned there the Jags have been coming here for a number of years, and obviously, they were the first team effectively to not have a franchise over here, but they were willing to give up some of their home games. Do you feel as though the fact that they've been coming now for a significant amount of time, that when the Jags play, it feels like a Jags home game, or do you still feel as though the novelty is loads of other teams' fans still go, and therefore it's almost like an NFL game as opposed to a Jags game?
Do you know, it's really interesting that, because I feel like this year is the first year I've noticed more Jags fans than ever.
Right.
I mean, that's inevitably going to happen anyway, but they do travel well, so fair play on that front. But I think the UK is always going to be the UK. I would be, unless, for example, we got a franchise, I don't ever see the stadium being just two colours. It's always going to be mixed until, for example, a franchise may or may not happen. Because if you think about it, we're just all excited as fans to be able to go to a game. So we're always going to wear our own colours. That's always going to happen. But I don't know, it'd be interesting if a franchise does or doesn't happen. I mean, let's talk about that, actually, because if you'd have said to me a year ago, I'd have been like, that's never going to happen. Like, the pipe dreams kind of, I mean, the NFL used to talk about it a lot, and then I felt like for a couple of years it's gone very, very quiet almost. But if the rumors are that Jacksonville doesn't want to, like the city or state or whatever on earth it is, doesn't want to pay for the stadium, to me, that makes the franchise in the UK a lot more possible.
Right.
I could like, now feels like the only time I could actually see that happening. If they get the stadium in Jacksonville, it's unlikely that they'll have a franchise in the UK unless suddenly another team shows interest in that. But it could be interesting. I mean, the Jags have just done 2 games in a row. They can now see that works. Could it be that they then do 3 games in a row next year? And then if, for example, the franchise was to work, they would probably do 3 or 4 games in one row, have a short break, and then come back for another 4 games, however they end up choosing to do it. But could be interesting.
Well, can I just ask, when you say
Yeah.
franchise in the UK, do you mean a team that is in the same leagues but is based in London or Manchester or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. So, exactly that. So, the best way to look at say it is Jacksonville, because they're East Coast, aren't they? They're not quite like New York East Coast, but they're certainly on the East Coast in that respect. So, that's the only way that it would work. It would have to be East Coast Treams Tavern, because they already travel that amount of time to go to the West Coast anyway. So they'd have to play it in a certain kind of way. But yeah, it would mean them moving over. So potentially becoming the London Jaguars. I was chatting to Ben Isaacs, who's a writer, the other day, and we were trying to work out what would they be called, because I was thinking, oh, maybe they'd just be called the UK Jags, but no, I think London, despite being a northerner and so against it, London as a word, it sells. So I could see it being, if anything, the London Jaguars. Yeah.
You see, I'm I suppose curious to one, and interesting now. Just listening to what you've said, Liz, about you wonder whether or not Jacksonville won't have the franchise, and actually they just move the whole franchise, and it's based in London. I just sort of made an assumption that if there was going to be a team from London, it would be part of an expansion program where they would invite 2, 3, 4 more teams, and you might have a Canadian-based team, and you might have a London-based team, and they just become an addition to the NFL. I never really thought about actually an existing NFL franchise just up sticks and move into London. I mean, the obvious one is the Jags. I mean, they've been here for ages, and obviously you've got the owner of the Jags owns Fulham, so that's a tie in there. But it's interesting because actually that didn't strike me at all when the rumor mill was that actually we were going to have a franchise. I just made an assumption it would just be part of an expansion program, and you would have effectively a new franchise. And with that comes, I suppose, the pitfalls of the last time there was an expansion. The Jags were part of that last expansion, and all of a sudden, and they sucked for a number of years. And actually now they're half decent, but you do go to that teething phase where actually your team is rubbish. And what you don't want to do, you don't want an expansion team that then is rubbish, because then it sort of defeats the object, because the team suck. Are you then going to generate the interest in it, etc., etc.? So I'm fascinated by that point of view, because I'd actually never thought of that.
Yeah, because I think that's what's interesting. Like so say the Jags do over, like what's always sits in the back of my head is like, is that sustainable? Is that going to sell out every single week? I almost think in a way that's why they've done up at some points done the 3 and 4 games, because it'd be interesting to see if it does actually work. And then there's the other side of it. Do they become, for example, the European Jaguars, and do they do the 3 games in London, the 2 games in Germany, what ultimately is going to be announced for Spain? It's just all kind of coming. It's an interesting one of whether the European League comes back. For some reason, I just don't see it. For example, exactly what you said, in the sense of they'll suck for a while. I just maybe in 10+ years time, I just don't see it right now. Because I just sort of wonder, is it actually sustainable? I mean, we've got things like the XFL that have tried. We've got the CFL in Canada and things like that, and they don't compete. So anything that needs to come has to be the NFL.
Yeah.
But is it going to have the same, I suppose, the same love and attention? Is it going to have the same atmosphere if they do, for example, have 4 new teams, if you will? I don't know. It's a really interesting one. I don't know. It sounds harsh, but I just don't know if Europe has the talent. It's certainly coming.
I wonder. Sorry, Dave, go on.
I was going to say, how would it? I'm just trying to think how that would work, because if one team came to London, that's fine for them when they're playing their home game, but all the other teams then got to fly between 8 and 11 hours to play the game.
Yeah.
And what about the fans? I mean, if Arsenal decided actually they were going to move to Seattle, and
Yeah.
that was then going to be the home stadium. I mean, that's just not going to fly, is it? I mean, isn't that
Oh,
just the same
it's-
with the NFL?
It's happened many times before. If you think about San Diego Chargers moving to LA, think about the other teams that have done that. So Oakland Raiders to Las Vegas, and this happens all the time. It happens when essentially the government locally doesn't want to pay for the stadium, or they've got a better offer elsewhere. For some reason it happens more. We can't even fathom that in Premier League. Like, it's just it's not even a thing. It would cause so much crap, wouldn't it? Like, imagine Liverpool as a prime example. Years ago, there was rumours that Liverpool were going to potentially move their stadium to Warrington because they could join it with someone else. But it would never go down well. I know Liverpool's not even far from Warrington, but you can't take that out from the local community. You just can't. But
we saw it with Wimbledon, didn't we?
Yeah.
And it killed them. They became the MK Dons, and Wimbledon fans just absolutely refused to watch them.
We just can't, as UK sports fans, we just, and it would be the same in America, I assume, the uproar. Yeah. We just can't, because it's never happened, we just can't comprehend uprooting a whole team and just moving, almost halfway across the country, just saying, well, actually, we haven't got a team. And, well, it's like Las Vegas. Obviously, the Raiders have moved there. They didn't have a team. The Raiders have gone, right, we're going to move from LA, and we're going to go to Las Vegas. And it's like the whole thing. It's like they just pick up the whole everything, just the whole, not just the team. It's like the stadium, the team, the franchise, everything just up sticks and moves. And it's like, all of a sudden, you generate this huge brand new fan base, and all of a sudden, like, the Las Vegas Raiders have got like 90,000 people wanting to go every week, and it's bloody bonkers.
I think that's where it's slightly different, isn't it? In there, moving it within the States. But like Dave, if you imagine that, like the question you asked about teams that are traveling over there, imagine being a Jaguars fan based in Florida, and all of a sudden your team have like moved, not just to another state but to another country. It would be heartbreaking. It's bizarre.
But you think traveling from let's say Jacksonville or from Miami, which maybe just an East Coast side, so someone like the Giants or the Jets, the distance it takes from them to travel from there to London is probably less than it is from them to travel to go and play Seattle, which is like top left, sort of northwest almost. So and I take your point though, Dave, the Jags playing at home, and this is how the logistics wouldn't work, because you might say, well, the Jags would play 2 or 3 home games on the run to stop them traveling, but the teams that play against the Jags would still have to travel, and I just don't, as much as I would love to see it, I just don't see it.
No, I think we've covered off a lot of the reasons there why it wouldn't work. I wonder as well, like you say, if we look at the fan base in the UK, as you said, you'll sell those stadiums out. You can sell them out 3 weeks running, no problem. And it's an absolute nightmare to get a ticket because there's people who are missing out right, left, and centre.
Yeah.
Are they Jags fans though? Are they Steelers fans?
Yeah.
Are they Bears fans? Are they Seahawks fans?
Like,
would you sell just to Jaguars fans? And
you'd sell to the away team. Yeah, I think you'd sell to the away team. Like, I can just see it now. For example, we've already had this, but say Green Bay come over. That will set, because everyone who's a Green Bay fan in the UK will want to go get the opportunity. Like, in a way, if you think about how the games are now, it's teams with every single jersey. If they went down the route of having the 8 home games here, and they had the different teams that fans want to go see, I can see it very much being Jags fans, maybe 30% of it, and then everyone else being Green Bay. Just because of who they are, how often they've been over, which is now once. It's just one of those things. It's interesting, and they know that the 2:30 p.m. kickoff, they know it works. They know that teams can travel over on Friday morning and leave Sunday night because they've done it several times now. Certainly from an away team perspective, there's just quite a few little factors that I think the NFL's experimented with. They see it works, and would make that their thing. When Ben and I were chatting about this the other day, I just don't see the viability of a Thursday night or a Monday night football game. There's no way you'd be able to play in Tottenham at 1 a.m. in the morning. Like it's never going to happen. It could only ever be a Sunday game. And then that starts to go into the rules of, well, then would that be fair? Because they've always got the advantage of a Sunday, whereas the team they might be playing has just played Monday night and now they're playing again on Sunday. So I don't know. It's really interesting. There's a lot of things that make me think it's doable, and then there's a couple of things that make me think, but then that's an issue. So I don't know. It's interesting, but I think the NFL's done what they've done for a reason so far, and I feel like it is doable.
The people that run the game, they're very intelligent people. They don't suffer fools. They make the decisions, as you just said, Liz. That the 2:30 game works.
Yeah.
The travel schedule works. The logistics work, and they don't do these things on a whim. That they do their due diligence. They do think about these things, and I'm with you, Liz. I think if you had a team from London and they played 8 home games, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I think so. For me, I'd go and watch one of the games, but I wouldn't stop supporting the Bears. I'd go and perhaps watch one.
Yeah.
And for me, there's no buy-in to go and watch 8 of the home games. Now, if you're a Jags fan, great. But are there enough Jags fans to then sell 8 times Jags tickets for home games? And I think as you see, if the Bears came over, all of the Bears from the UK, but not just the UK, because you'd get Bears fans from France and from Germany and from Spain, they would come over because it's much more accessible to them than it is to go to the States. So I think you're right, Liz, in as much as it would almost be a Jags home game, but it wouldn't be a home game. It'd be an away game, because actually 70% of the stadium will be filled with their opponent's shirts because they've come all the way from Europe just to see them.
Yeah, definitely, I suppose in a way it's like anything, it takes time to build, doesn't it? So if this happens, say the Jags, they move over next year, whatever, 10 years time, there will be a big Jags franchise just because they're here. But for us as loyal long-term fans, like, we are not going to change our teams. We're just, they might become our second team, or as someone else has said, they're 1.5 team. Like, it's all doable, but us here right now, we are not the market for the Jags. We are not that market. We are not the market for the NFL. They already have our money. Look at the jerseys. Like, we've spent our money with the NFL. They're after the new fans. They're trying to get new people into the sport, and in that respect, build the Jaguar fan base, because the Jags are over here as a team now. Like the NFL UK team from a couple of years ago, they work for Jaguars UK now. So there's definitely an investment from the Jaguars. Whether that becomes a franchise over here, we don't know, but it feels like the playing pieces are all there ready to go.
It does, I get what you're saying, and like I say, I don't see people switching allegiances. I think that would be their biggest challenge. But one way that it would be less of a challenge in terms of the logistics of it, in terms of the games, would be if we were to have an entire European conference, because those sort of teams will be playing something between, I think, 11 and 12 of their games would be based in Europe. All their home games would be in Europe. If it's a European franchise, the 3 away games would, 3 of their away games would be in Europe. There'd be a challenge for people coming over here for sure. But I think logistically that would work a little bit better. And I wonder, like you say, with the announcement of the Spanish game coming next year, we think Germany having a couple of games, and actually, I think the Dolphins Chief game is probably the pick of the bunch that's happening in the international series. We were desperate to try and get tickets to that, and they sold out in seconds. I can tell you, because we tried to get tickets to that one.
I think you might be right. I just wonder about, again, it goes back to what Liz said a minute ago about the fairness of it. So if you had a new conference, for example, and you had, and I'll use the phrase, the London Monarchs, the Rhine Fire, the Amsterdam, whatever they were called, I can't remember. But if you had that, it then goes back to, okay, well, they might play each other in the European conference, but the teams that then play against them, because you're going to have some teams, the existing NFL team. So who plays against them? And actually, because they will suck for the first however long, and because similar to the old world NFL, whatever it's called, they're basically like college kids or free agents or whatever. They then become the whipping boys. So then the NFL teams that do play them almost get a walkover because they get an easy W. So therefore, you look at again at the fairness of the rota in terms of who plays them. And I take your point. You come over and you play London, you play Rheinfire, you play Amsterdam, and you play 3 or 4 of your away games over a 2-week period in Europe, and you fly back to the States. I get that. For me, it's just the fairness of who gets to play those teams, and is it only the Eastern Conference teams? So, like your New York's, like your Miami's, maybe is it only them, or are you expecting the Seattle to come all the way over?
At some point, they'll have to. The way it's worked out is, you know what I mean. I can't figure out how it's worked out. Let's be honest. We don't find out whether
it's not like an 8-year road or whatever.
No,
exactly, or away, or whatever it is,
we can never figure it out or fathom it. But so you're right. Some would have that, but that's the way it is now. Some teams suck now. But if you think about it from the European Conference point of view, there's going to be 4 teams there which probably will suck terribly, but one of them's going to make the playoff, 2 of them potentially. You know what I mean? The wild card and what have you. It's an interesting selling point from that aspect.
I like it to grow the game. I just wonder whether that might be a step too far. Well, I mean, obviously in 30 years' time we might get it, but I just think it might be a step too far at the moment. I don't know.
Yeah,
I got a couple of points, and they're slightly different. But if you had the one team over here in the franchise, what's going to happen with the draft when the American poster boy finds out he's going to live in London? And a second question is, if you go for this European conference, which I don't understand at all, other than there'll be more teams in Europe, do you think actually it's going to need momentum at grassroots level to actually support that long term? And American football isn't like our football, where you can just 2 jumpers and a football. You know, you need an awful lot of kit to pay at any decent standard, and that's a massive curve to get over to get any traction, isn't it?
Yeah, then that's why they've invested so heavily in the NFL Academy. We are seeing British players accepting their college teams now, so it is starting to happen for sure. They just did 2 games back to back with like American high schools, and they won both those games. So to be British guys playing against kids who've played football their entire life, to win those 2 games, I think that tells me that the talent here is good. Yeah. But like you say, it needs that momentum. It's just starting at that grassroots level. It's just about to become more. I mean, you've got the whole BAFA League in the UK, haven't you? You've got your college teams, your university teams even, who are brilliant. And you've got the European League itself of BAFA that, do really well. Like you say, though, is that going to mean we've got the talent across Europe to do that? And can they compete with America? I don't know. That's the tough one.
I mean, to be honest, Dave, you make a great point. I mean, the whole draft system, I suppose, that's, again, for somebody who knows very little about the NFL, it's quite an insightful question, because it actually opens
up a backhanded compliment.
it actually opens up, because the number one guy in college is like, woo, where am I going? It's like, actually going to Amsterdam. What? How does that work?
Yeah.
I think we might be a bit happy about that.
Okay, but you take my point, and then all of a sudden, so how do you fill these teams? And if the talent in Europe isn't there yet, do you fill those teams with, as I said 5 minutes ago, college players, free agents, journeymen? At which point it just becomes the old World League or whatever it was, like 30 years ago or whatever, 20 years ago, and it's the same thing just rehashed. And I don't know. The draft is a great question, and I genuinely don't know the answer. The number one poster where you imagine like Mahomes a few years ago, whatever, thinking, well, where am I going to end up? I'm going to end up in Berlin. I mean, fair enough, Berlin's not that I've been, but by all accounts, it's a great place. But he ends up there, and then it's like, well, I'm going there. Who else is coming? It's like, oh God, you've got some Tom, Dick, and Harry from wherever. I don't know.
Yeah, that is an interesting aspect of it. It'd be worse than going to Cleveland.
Yeah, there's not many worse things, I don't think. But
There's not many worse things. No, there isn't. So I think what we're effectively saying there is, as fantastic as it is as a spectacle now, this is probably the best that we should ever hope for, is really 2 or 3 games a year, isn't it, to look forward to? And it's probably the model that makes the most sense, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually, you know, when I think about it, it makes it interesting. So look at the UK. We've got 3 games right now. Germany's had got 2. They had 1 last year. Are they about to have 3? Is Spain, if that get announced, is that about to have 2? There's also the idea of Ireland. Well, Mexico already has them. That's it, exactly. Mexico's got, I think, 2 also, doesn't it? So I think it just gets more and more interesting. I mean, I didn't even think that Spain was on the cards, but then the stadium, is it Real Madrid Stadium's got a retractable pitch? I mean, it's pretty obvious that it's going down that route. Germany started for 1 game.
Sorry, Liz, that's got to be self-limiting though, hasn't it? That's got to be self-limiting, because 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, and there's none left in America.
Right, exactly, that's it. And I think this is the interesting part. So sport is saturated in America. Like, there's so many sports competing with things. You've got basketball and baseball. They're all just as big, I think, as American football. They, I feel, are trying to target more areas. So you've got the official accounts for NFL in China and Australia. Don't see games happening there other than, say, a exhibition style game, just because the time zone, the travel, it's I think too much. But it just feel like the market is saturated for them in America. So they're trying to make more money from Europe, just like any other business would. And it's working because we're all so desperate for a game. Like, I remember when Germany first got announced, and I was very much of the mindset, like, oh, I'm not going to try and go for Germany tickets because I don't think it's fair on the Germany fans. Of course, as soon as tickets came available, like, I wanted them like everyone else. I didn't get them, never been. And the same's going to happen with Spain as well. But you are right. Like, at what point? I think this almost goes into, like, fans already hate that they're losing a home game of their team. It's very expensive for them to then come over. Interestingly, I think the Bears have got 9 home games next year. So I think the Bears are going to be the team that plays in Spain as a home game, potentially.
Woo! Madrid, here we come, baby.
Madrid 2024.
Let's go.
You heard it here first, ladies and gents. You heard it here first.
That's interesting, though, that.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see how it's evolving. It's interesting to see what's going to happen. We never know how it's going to go. We never get kind of, that much insight, but we know it can work. So it'll be interesting.
I was going to say, do you hear whispers in terms of, and how far ahead, I suppose, do they plan schedules? I mean, I know obviously the team schedules for next year will probably be out already, because the logistics, just in terms of shifting that amount of gear and that amount, you've got, your hotels and your transport and your travel and your bags. And when you think about it, you think, Christ, it's like a massive operation. But you have to plan ahead. So I wonder whether or not this sort of 24, 25 schedule, is that almost thought of already? And do you guys in the media, do you get a little whisper? We
get nothing. We find out when everyone else finds out.
Really?
Yeah, so we definitely don't get any whispers on that front. Interestingly, though, and I don't know if this is a clue or not. So when I reached out to a particular NFL team, so I'm not gonna mention them because I don't want to get in trouble. But when I reached out to a particular team earlier this year, so probably around summer, to ask them, can I have an interview one of your players or your coaches? They were like, not on this occasion, but hopefully we'll be in London next year, and then we can set something up then. So, I mean, what an interesting comment to make. Because if you just didn't want to do the interview, you could have said something else. I do feel like they know. Yeah. But I won't know that until those games get announced. And if it does, then I'll know that it was a clue. But I don't know. It's an interesting one. They must know. They must know to an extent. Because they know already. As far as I know, they know already who they're playing. They just don't necessarily know when.
Who's giving up? Yeah, and I don't think that
Yeah.
they would know who's giving up who's prepared to give up the home games. I suppose there's a lot of I suppose negotiation in terms of, well, we know the Bears are playing the Steelers, we're not, but we know the Bears are playing the Steelers, and then it's like, well, if neither of us are prepared to give up a home game, then you go to a different two franchise and go, well, are either of you prepared to give up your home game? No.
Yeah.
Well, are you two? And so on and so on and so on. Until you
Yeah.
get to one team that goes, well, we'll give up one of ours. Ah, right, okay, we can work with that. Now, how does it work? Sort of thing.
Yeah. But there's rules, isn't there? I think, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So if you, for example, want a stadium, or if you want, if you want a new stadium, or for example, you want to host a Super Bowl, I'm sure there's rules. I can't remember this, but I'm sure there's things like you have to play a game in London to do this. And so I don't know, it's an interesting one. There's definitely a lot of like little factors that are involved in it all, but it is interesting. Like, yeah, I mean, there's definitely videos out there, but I would love to see how on earth this schedule is decided and things like that. Like,
maybe
there's
it's part of
the
draft. Maybe it's part of the draft process that you don't
because
actually
they
see
know already. Yeah,
the trading top picks for avoiding playing in London. I'll go to London.
Could be
if
possible.
you give me the top pick.
Probably not. It's an interesting theory, though, Dave. You should have just stuck with the last one, which was a really good one.
Oh, but that's a fair point, though, because they do know. They know the Super Bowl for the next few years. They know where the draft is located for the next few years. They must have the schedules for the next few years lined up also.
But again, it's interesting because if they have the schedules lined up and the teams maybe don't know whether they're going to London or Madrid or wherever it may be.
Yeah.
At some point, there has to be some marketing, and the whole marketing sort of side of the NFL has to get its ass in gear and go to Madrid and then start marketing it in Madrid. So how far in advance does that happen? Because you're not just going to announce the game and then, a month later, bang, there you go. Because there's all the stuff there's the posters, there's printing, there's all of the merchandise and everything around it. So when does that happen? And surely there are people in the know that are maybe doing, I don't know, printing stuff that have got Madrid 2024 or 5 on it or whatever already. That you think, God, they must non-disclosure agreements and all sorts of stuff, because if they're
100%.
tight-lipped about it, there has to be people have to know already.
Yeah, it's booking a stadium, isn't it? Like, for example, when it comes to like concerts, like they've got that stadium booked months, if not a good year in advance. So I assume the same is with sport, but I suppose that's an interesting point, because the NFL released, what was it, a year or two ago, the whole you are now allowed to market in that country. There was whole rules around which teams got which places. So maybe that's also a clue of who's going to get investment over there, because everywhere around the world, if you will, has a team. Individuals have teams that they support and then they follow. So are those teams just capitalizing on the most fans in that area? Because I think the 49ers, I'm sure they're the UK. I think the Bears are also the same. But that's because, again, there's a lot of history with those teams and with viewership in the UK. So, is that a part of it all as well? We've got more questions than answers, haven't we, guys?
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah. That's true, and I think it'll remain that way for a while. I think the talk might die down. Yeah, and the talk might die down like it has, but it'll pick back up again. The more popular it gets, and that's the one thing that hasn't changed. It's continuing to get more popular within the UK.
Yeah.
So, just out of interest, then, you've been to the Spurs stadium. Something I'll never do as an Arsenal fan. So I'll only ever go to Wembley on general principle. I won't put money in Daniel Levy's pocket. But what's it like then? Because that one was built with the idea of hosting NFL games.
Yeah, so as stadiums go, it is pretty impressive. So the way that the stadium's been built, the sound circulates around it really, really well. And I'm pretty sure the new Bills stadium is based on the same stadium as Tottenham. So that's quite interesting in itself. But yeah, it's a fascinating stadium. Comparing it to Wembley, I mean, I like Wembley because there's more space. But Tottenham's in the middle of the housing estate. Like, you don't have the space to play with it. But it is a very, very cool stadium, very high tech, very nicely done. So yeah, respect on that front. Like, I know what you mean from a I refuse to step foot in it from being an Arsenal fan. Like, I'm sure if there was a game in Liverpool, there's absolutely no way my husband would even dare step foot in there being a United fan. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. It definitely plays as a factor for football fans, but depends what's bigger. You love if the Steelers play in Tottenham, are you going to not go?
Dude, if the Steelers are playing the Bears at Tottenham Stadium, you're going.
Oh, no,
I'm telling you,
yeah.
for a fact.
The Steelers, I'd break something while I was there. 220 quid's worth of damage.
Yeah, it's so fascinating because I don't think, other than the logo on the outside of the stadium, and obviously the walkway at the top with the logo again kind of on there, the bird, whatever on earth that is, you wouldn't know that you wouldn't know it's a Tottenham game. It feels like the signs are all done very well. You know it's a London NFL game, so it's quite interesting. It's disguised in some kind of way that you could be anywhere.
Yeah, and it's just it's your TV screens, it's your wraparound entertainment and your lights and your lighting, and it's I think I'm right in saying at Tottenham it's like a 360 on the inside, isn't it? So it wraps around the whole of the inside of the stadium. So similar to some now American football, it might be same as it's SoFi Stadium. I think maybe has that as well. So it's literally a 360 sort of thing, and you've got screens all over the place for your for instant replays and all that sort of stuff. So. I mean, I would quite like to go and see it because it is meant to be cool. And when you buy a beer, apparently they fill the beer up from the bottom. So I'm not quite sure how that works, but I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah.
It does look interesting. So we normally keep these episodes to round about an hour. So we are at the hour mark now for those of you confused as to why I may have just said that. So before we go then, before we say goodbyes, first of all, thank you very much for freeing up an hour of your time to share your opinion and your love for the sport with us. We really enjoyed it, haven't we, guys?
Yeah, I mean, I said right at the start of the podcast, I love talking NFL. I love talking NFL with somebody that genuinely loves and understands and knows the NFL probably to a massive extent more than we do. So, Liz, it's been great to have you on. We say this to not all of our guests, but some of our guests. We'd love to have you on again just to discuss some of the things that we've spoken about in perhaps a little bit more detail. If you do get the odd little bit of inside information and bits of nugget, talk again, particularly the broadcasting media point of view, that would be fascinating again to go into. So just a big thank you for me, really. It's, like I said, we love talking about the NFL. I've really enjoyed a different perspective on it. And I think next time, and I know we spoke about it a lot, but really explore that European conference because I think we've got some unanswered questions there. So, I can't wait till next time, really. And if you're prepared to, we would love to have you back on again, talking about what we love.
Yeah,
Sounds
absolutely. we can share the story of how we got our press passes and then how they were shortly afterwards revoked. Dave, what have you got a lot out of this one?
Thanks, Liz. It's interesting because like the last episode when it's like we're doing NFL, and as the guys have made abundantly clear, I did know nothing about it, but last time I learned quite a lot about the mechanics of the actual game. I still don't understand the tactics, the players and the teams' names or where they come from or any other history or anything like that. But now I know a lot more about the way they franchise and play games in the UK and elsewhere in Europe and what they're looking to do. So from that point of view, it's really interesting. So enjoyed it.
Thanks. Good. I'm glad.
We just need to get him watching a game, don't we?
Yeah, it'd be great to get watching a game. Absolutely, get him involved in the razzmatazz.
Indeed.
Just watch the highlights.
You can watch the highlights. It's a good place to start. Yeah, get yourself on.
I do actually. To be fair, I actually watch on the BBC Sports. They do. Is it the top 10 plays? Is it?
Yeah. BBC. I think BBC Sport do. Yeah.
And I do actually occasionally watch that, and it's okay. So it's normally the same. Some guy throws the ball under his legs. Somebody catches it. He throws it really far. Somebody else catches it, and then cheers.
That's about right.
But it's pretty talented stuff to do. Occasionally, someone catches the ball and runs quite far with it, but mostly they catch it and throw it. But
the NFL for a brand new generation, there, folks.
That's
it's quite good.
It's a future in sports commentary for you.
He's not really the David Coleman of the NFL or whatever. Some bloke just caught it. He ran quite a long way and then spiked it on the ground for 6 points. Yeah, happy
Yeah.
days.
What's going on? I'm not sure.
Got to start somewhere.
You do.
Absolutely.
You do. You do. So, Liz, did you want to tell our listeners where they can find you online and the different podcasts and the different other things that you do?
Yeah, so I have a blog at nflgirluk.com, and then I have 3 podcasts. So one is called Cleats Off, which is the football boot. That is generally interviews with players, media personalities, and more. So it kind of gives you a bit of an insight, I suppose, in some ways, to a day in the life of what an NFL player has to go through. Then there is End Zone Scoop, which is myself, a Scottish lady called Shona, and a lady who is based in Kansas City Chiefs. We're all Seahawks fans, but we don't just talk about Seahawks. We talk about what's happened that week or the week before. And then the final one is Her Huddle. So it's a Sky Sports podcast, which we are on as kind of like a chatty pod, we call it. But there's also a TV show that Hannah Wilkes hosts and interviews kind of women around the NFL. It's great. Again, another show that gives insight to things. So those are the 3 podcasts I have. And yeah, you can find me on social media at NFL Girl UK, which is just where my name is.
Indeed. Yeah. So, and it is consistent across all platforms as well. So something that
Yeah,
we didn't
it
quite
is.
get
Yeah,
in on,
it certainly is. Yeah.
Yeah. Because unfortunately, somebody already taken Tallboy Radio on Instagram. Swines.
Yeah, we'll have them.
It's
We'll
so
have 'em.
hard. I think because thankfully I was around early enough to get the name in, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's when we had Pigskin Podcast on. That's funny enough. One of the things that they said, they had this grand design of what they wanted to get out of it, but they've seen what you've done, and same as us, look on with great respect and envy. So fair play to everything that you've done and achieved, and no doubt we'll go on to achieve more as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
So should we say our goodbyes to our listeners? Liz, we'll let you say goodbye to our listeners first, then we'll go around the room.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's been really great. Yeah.
Cool. Gaza?
Yeah, echo what I said a couple of minutes ago. Absolutely loved it. Loved talking NFL. Fascinating just to chat to Liz. Insight into a slightly different side of the NFL. Can't wait to have her back on and talk some more American football.
Indeed. Dave?
Yeah, thanks, Liz. It's been educational.
And I will say thank you on behalf of all 3 of us as well. Thank you on behalf of our listeners. Thank you for everybody who's commented as well. And thank you for all who will go and listen to it when we release it on audio, which I think releases the day before Halloween. So I'll wish everybody a happy Halloween and say good night and thank you for listening.